So now we need to start writing the code for the interceptor. So I'll just go ahead and set up the basic imports here for this class. Then I set up the class declaration, auth interceptor service implements HTTP interceptor. The HTTP interceptor is an interface defined in the Angular framework. And so it has a method that we'll have to implement as part of our coding. And for our constructor, we're going to inject the Okta auth service because we'll actually use that a little bit later to get the current access token for the user that's logged in. And remember, I said the HTTP interceptor is an Angular interface, so we'll actually implement that interface, and that one method that we have to implement is called intercept. So here's the coding for it here. So they simply pass in a request, the next handler, and it returns an observable. This will basically intercept all outgoing HTTP requests of the HTTP client that we're making use of. Now we have a return and we have this.handle access. So it's just a little helper method that we've defined in this class. So I have this handle access, has a request and a next handler. Note here, there's a new keyword at the beginning called async. So that says that this is an asynchronous function. And this method will also return a promise. And so a promise is basically a way of having a future. So you're saying, hey, we're going to perform this operation and we're going to return a value in the future. And this is the type of data that we're going to return. So it's kind of like a ticket or like an IOU, and we'll eventually return that data back to the calling program. We only want to add an access token for our secured endpoints. So here I'll just set up this very basic array of our secured endpoints /API/orders. And then I check to see if the secured endpoints is in the current URL that the user is making a call for. If so, then I'll get the access token. So I'll use this.oktaauth.getAccessToken. Now this getAccessToken is a async call. And what we'll do is we'll make use of this new keyword called await. So this is some very nice syntactic sugar available in TypeScript where you can wait for the async call to finish without having to get into any special coding syntax or whatever. So it's basically saying, hey, we're making this async call to a promise and we are going to wait on the results. And then those results, then we'll assign it to our given access token. And so now we go through and we clone the request and we add a new header with our access token. Here I say request equals request.clone, and then I add in that new header. So remember, right? We're setting a new header. So the header is authorization, bearer, and then we give the actual value of our access token. So we're adding a new header here. Now, you may wonder, why am I cloning the request? Well, the request is immutable. That means that you can't change the request directly. So the only way you can make changes here is create a copy of that request and then make your changes accordingly. So that's why we do a request.clone, and then we add in new headers there. And that's the reasoning for that coding syntax. And then down at the bottom, we return next.handleRequest.toPromise. Effectively, this will basically pass the request to the next interceptor in the chain. If there are no more interceptors in the chain, it simply makes a call to the destination API that you're making a call for. Okay, great. So kind of standing back a bit, and we see here in the bottom left, we have the setup in place. So we have our client Angular app, uses the HTTP client, calls our interceptor. That interceptor basically adds the access token, and it puts it into the request header for authorization bearer and the value of that access token. Alrighty, step 2 is updating the app module TS to reference the interceptor. So we'll move into our app module.ts file. We have our normal declarations and imports, and then here for providers, we'll basically set up a reference here for the interceptor. So we make use of provide HTTP interceptors. So that's the token for the HTTP interceptors. And so now we register our auth interceptor service as an HTTP interceptor. And then for the multi-true, this informs Angular that the HTTP interceptors is a token for injecting an array of values. Because remember, with these interceptors, you can have 0 to many interceptors. Now, the word token here, it's kind of overloaded. Don't get confused. So they're not really referring to the JWT token or the access token or whatever. They're just referring to a token in a general sense. So basically like a string or for hash maps, like a key or whatever. That's their use of it in this fashion. But I use the word token here because when you look at the interceptor documentation, they make use of that same reference or terminology. Visit the link that I have here on this slide. It'll take you to a page that has additional resources on these topics, and they're very useful. Alrighty, well, this all looks really good. I'm excited. I'm ready to dive into the IDE and start writing some code. So I'll see ya in the next video.